first red t-shirt I've worn since 1987 because I'm a member of the GA. I'm on strike. I care so much.
after a Aron and Kent Hovind both in person here tonight. This is going to be a historic night, I think. We're going to have a WWE. So we have not quite a G, the membership director and voicemail. The two contenders.
Well, I don't think either one of these gentlemen kind of need any kind of introduction. I think that they discussion, and then we'll have Aron do the same. Give about 1 or 2 minutes, explain who you are, your position, and then we'll have Aron do the same.
Certainly, yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Me here. I'm 65 years old. My name's Kent Hovind.
All right, can you guys hear now? Oh no, I just did all of that and no one could hear anything at all. Hopefully I've solved that problem. I don't know what happened. OBS just changed what it was, which device it was looking for some reason, and for some reason my mic isn't my main audio. Oh no. All right, so I will do all of that again. Oh my god, that's so embarrassing and really unfortunate because I went through a lot of context for that. Thank you so much, PC Keen, for pointing that out to me. So from the beginning, then, I got my tea. It's in my grandpa mug. I'm happy about it. This is some Dorian Earl Grey again. We're back to that. It is at this point cool enough to drink. I fixed my my I fixed my light bulb that went out yesterday, which was very rude. I complained a little bit about the difficulties of being tall because I could barely not reach the bulb to put the new one in because it was slightly smaller, but I could remove the first one to get like a book to stand on just so I could reach to put in the new one. It's hard being tall. Oh man, it makes me really sad that I missed all of that. Okay, from the top, we are talking about Kent Hovind and Aron Ra. This is a discussion about creationism versus evolution. For context, who we're talking about, Aron Ra we talked about a little bit before because he was in conversation with Daniel Hakigachu a couple of days ago, but we didn't really talk too much about Aron. We talked mostly about Hakigachu. In this case, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Aron. He is an atheist activist and science popularizer who has done a lot of work, in particular on the Phylogeny Explorer project. This is something I am going to try to link in the description, but apparently YouTube is giving me some difficulties on that end, so I will just recommend everybody to go to this website until I get that fixed, explorer.phylogeny-explorer-project.com. This is a very different version of evolution, or of understanding evolution and taxonomy, than at the very least what I was taught in school and what I imagine most people were. When I was taught, at the very least, it was, I think Lamarckian is the term for that, but it's kingdom, phylum, order, that whole jazz for the categorization of species. Phylogeny takes a different view of that. It's not to say that that's necessarily wrong, but it is less useful. Instead, phylogeny separates things as in relation to their ancestry. So you'll get instead something that looks like this, where you have archaea with all these species as they relate to their common ancestor. That's what each of these joints represents. And in here you can see more clearly that something like Animalia and fungi, as we see on the bottom here. I don't think my cursor gets captured for some reason, so I'll just reference all the way on the right side here. It's not that like animals evolved out of fungi. It is that they both had a common ancestor that gave way to both of them at that divergent point. This is a big deal for this conversation because this understanding alleviates some of the, we'll say, misunderstandings that creationists seem to have about how evolution works. That said, in this particular case, I don't think Kent misunderstands. I think he is aware and is actively lying because he has been presented with information that he simply acts like he's never heard before in subsequent conversations. So this is really important. I would recommend checking this out. My understanding is that the Phylogeny Explorer project is, I don't know if it's live, but it is supposed to be a navigable online encyclopedia, free for anyone to use, that is understandable to even school children, which is really nice to have this kind of tool available where you can navigate, as you can see on the left here, you can navigate the phylogenetic tree and see where common ancestry is and how far back different groups split from each other, and that's where you can see something like Animalia and like CPR bacteria on the far ends of this diagram of a small portion of what the phylogeny tree would look like, has many different divergences before you get to a common ancestor, many separations in between. So that's Aron Ra. a pretty cool guy. My understanding is that he is a member of the Satanic Temple, which is not as scary as it sounds. I'm not going to get into them too much, but they're actually not, from my understanding, not that bad of a group. Or I shouldn't say not that bad. They're mostly, it's mostly tongue in cheek, the satanic thing, and not a legitimate worship of evil. And those who do actually like Satan as a concept view him instead as the antithesis of what God is presented as in the Bible, which is in a lot of ways extremely evil. There are a lot of calls for genocide from biblical canon. Aron is, I don't want to say less interesting, but certainly more well, differently interesting than Kent Hovind, on the other hand. For those of you who are unaware, Kent Hovind, and this is fun because I get to say this without saying allegedly, is a fraud. He is actually a convicted fraud. I will get to what he was convicted of in just a moment. I discussed this previously, but sadly, no sound. So, there's that. But Kent Hovind is the creator of Dinosaur Adventureland. He is a proponent of young Earth creationism. He has made his career on teaching people anyone who will listen to him that that the universe was created in 7 24-hour days 6,000 years ago by God. Dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time in Eden. All this jazz. This is what he teaches. He presents himself as an educator, is saying he is taught in schools. He did not. What he did was, there were people that went to like the same church as him or whatever else that let him come lie to their homeschooled children. They might not have realized that that's what he was doing, but that's what he was doing. He claims to be a doctor. His doctorate is from a diploma mill, non-accredited institution. He refuses to publish his thesis, which is very interesting because, as my understanding, doctoral theses are a contribution to the state of knowledge. That is a requisite, and so publishing is a necessary part of that. The whole point is that you have added to the state of knowledge and earned the position, and by doing so earned the title of doctor, and he refuses to publish his. The little bits that we have seen show that he starts his doctoral thesis by saying, with the let's see if I can find it so I can prove it to you. With hold on, okay, yeah, it's on WikiLeaks. Hold on, I think, yeah, a lot of these will have been taken down because he goes where, yeah, like, I don't think it's accessible anymore because he's gone after this kind of stuff. But we do have, like, it starts with, "Hello, my name is Kent Hovind," in his doctoral thesis. Like, this is the kind of guy we're talking about. So, circling back a little bit, what was he convicted of in terms of fraud? Is this crime called structuring. I won't get into the details too much, but it is a form of defrauding the United States government I think for tax purposes. Oh yeah, it is definitely for tax purposes, because he was basically withdrawing money from his account in small enough increments that the bank doesn't have to report it to the government, and he was using that as wages for his employees that he didn't want to declare to the government. And so he is, yes, a convicted fraud. Factor that into your thinking for this discussion. And I'm like skipping past so much stuff because I blathered for like a half hour before I knew that I had no sound. I'm gonna stop going on about it, but it hurts. It really does hurt. Some of the stuff to keep in mind here is that in a lot of competitive debates, you'll have the assumption that there is one side that has the default position. Basically, if there is an affirmative position trying to prove something, and the other side is simply negating it, then you can default to the negation. There are problems with that in some cases, but in this case, both sides should be presenting a theory. It is insufficient for Kent in particular to merely attack evolution, even if he were to somehow magically, this time as opposed to all the other times, demonstrate the flaws of evolution and demonstrate that it is an inaccurate model for speciation. He will not have proved creationism. There could be another model that explains things better than either could. That is still theoretically possible, even though the evidence for evolution is overwhelming. And while we're on the subject, because we're honest about our positions here, yes, I believe in the theory of evolution by natural selection. While I have not done any study into it myself, I am convinced by the consensus of of basically literally anyone who's looked at it who isn't an outright fraud. And I don't mean like, oh, anyone who rejects it is a fraud, so much as it's just kind of funny how the people who do are always discredited for some reason or other, or actively, or like it's very easy for people in the same field to easily tear apart their their positions in opposition to the theory of evolution by natural selection. So that's my position on this. I think at this point the amount of evidence is so thorough for evolution that it honestly would be fair for the default position to be evolution, in that a creationist would have that an evolutionist should merely have to say disprove creationism to prove their position. But if we're being maximally charitable to the creationist position, which I don't know why we would, but if we were, then we should say both need to present their positions and demonstrate them. There was another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't remember right this second what that would be. Give me just one moment. Oh yeah. Talk about like Kent Hovind as a character. He is extremely dishonest, and if you haven't seen it before, you are in for quite the show today. There's a reason we are bracing ourselves for this one. He is highly dishonest. He has been known to claim to have never heard a counter argument when for something when it's been recorded and accessible to anyone. The many times people have provided arguments against what he's saying, he just lies. I don't know how much he believes any of this stuff, but he's clearly a grifter, very obviously just trying to trick enough people into giving him money until that he can live comfortably until he dies. I think he has a son who follows in his footsteps, so I'm not really sure about that. Additionally, we have a follow-up video for tomorrow that I want to go over, which is Genetically Modified Skeptic, a channel I like a lot. I don't watch too much, but I do like how he presents things. I think he's a really smart guy and very insightful. Has a response to Kent Hovind watching his videos, and the reason why this is relevant is because Genetically Modified Skeptic here was, as is mentioned in this video, was raised watching Kent Hovind videos. I think he said it wasn't until college that he was presented with anyone saying other than creationism was real, and used to watch these videos from Kent Hovind. And this is why Kent Hovind is dangerous. It's not just that he says wacky things. He says wacky things to impressionable children who were then misled and lived their whole lives believing a lie because this guy wanted their parents' money. So that's something to keep in mind, especially because Kent is the kind of guy who will say, listen, we both have our religion. By that, he means evolution, which is not a religion. It is a scientific theory. I just don't want mine taught in schools. First of all, yes, you do. You brag about having been a middle school science teacher. You weren't, but you did lie to children for a while, claiming to be a teacher. Additionally, evolutionists just want what is demonstrably true to be taught, and as it turns out, evolution is demonstrably true. I don't know how else to break it to you, buddy. Sucks to suck, I guess. So that's what we'll get into. Oh shoot, I keep remembering things that I mentioned prior, and haven't yet gotten to. Right. Kent also does not understand evolution as a concept. He will often talk about things like Big Bang cosmology as being evolution, which should be to literally anyone who has heard these terms before. Obviously not the same thing, but I understand a lot of people do believe him because they are either uninformed or actively misinformed by people like Kent. He will also conflate things that are a little less obviously not part of evolution as being that, including abiogenesis. I don't. Oh, yeah. So someone asking in chat how he mixes these things up. I don't think he does. I think he knows the difference, but it works into his grift because it's also one of those like he can't disprove either Big Bang cosmology or evolution. But when you conflate the two and call them the same thing, anytime someone wants to talk about one, you can deflect to the other. We actually saw this a little bit a few days ago in the debate with Vosh and T-Jump. If you have interest in going back and watching that, this happens sometimes. Conflating two things allows you to jump between the two in a way that lets you act like neither is under attack when all you're doing is switching from one goalpost to the other. So I don't think he mixes them up. I think he just lies about it. The one thing that it's possible for people to mix up is that he calls evolution. He has like 5 different forms of evolution. I think at most one of them is actually evolution, and it might not even be an accurate description of that. But he does call abiogenesis evolution. To break that word down for anyone who hasn't heard it before, genesis, creation, bio, life, without. So the creation of life from non-life is what that is. The thing is, and while this might appear to be like part of the theory of evolution because it's an explanation for life, and that seems to be what evolution is talking about, it's not. Evolution is a description of how species change and evolve, how species change over time. It could, and as my understanding, makes no comment on what it is that created the first life or how the first life arose from non-life. In fact, you could demonstrate without a shadow of a, if it were possible to, if someone theoretically demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that abiogenesis is impossible without the hand of a supernatural creator sparking it from the outset, not one word of evolution would have to change, because all evolution discusses is how once we have life, how it became the life that exists now, and how it might proceed from here and what forces act upon it, a model of these changes. Further, he misunderstands the concept of theory. Remember, this is well worn, but I want to cover it just in case anyone is, just is unaware. In normal language, when people talk about a theory, they mean an idea they think but isn't verified. That's not how it is in science. In science, theory is just short of law. You need a significant amount of evidence to demonstrate it. Another theory that exists is the theory of gravity, to give you an idea. So to say the theory of evolution is just a theory, imagine saying that about gravity. Now, I know flat earthers do, but maybe that's a subject for a different day. They're also absolutely wrong about what they're talking about and have no clue what they're talking about. This is all way beyond them. In the same way, when you hear evolution is just a theory, you can substitute in gravity and think about how ridiculous it would be. You might as well say law for how well it's proven. It's not quite there because I think because it's not so thorough that it could be called a law, but it's not just like, we can't verify it, but we think it's true. No, this is very much backed up by science. And I keep forgetting there's like another thing and another thing and another thing that I want to talk about, and I keep forgetting. Hopefully it'll come. Oh, I remember now. Discussion. So that's the last, hopefully the last thing that I haven't yet gone over again, which is this is slated as a discussion, you can see here in the discussion, and not a debate. The distinction between which we'll get into as it sadly comes up during this conversation. There is a difference, but as far as how things will end up going, like it's almost a distinction without a difference. We shouldn't expect the same sort of segmented speaking blocks. Instead, it'll be more conversational. But if I remember correctly, they do have opening statements, and when you have opening statements and then a back and forth, it does feel a little bit like, at the very least, what modern day debate does very frequently, where you have your opening and then the discussion period and then Q&A is just the format of a debate or of the debate that they have. In this case, it's not billed as a debate; it's billed as a discussion. Bear that in mind when Kent starts complaining. I think that is everything I wanted to go over out of the way. Let's get into it.
I've been a Baptist, ordained Baptist preacher since 1974. I taught high school science and math in Christian schools.
so he says he taught high school science and math in Christian schools. He was brought in to homeschool children to teach them things that aren't true. He is not a teacher.
Schools for 15 years. I've been a full-time evangelist speaking on creation versus evolution for about 30 years now. I take the position that the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate, and the evolution theory is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of humanity.
This is something that happens a lot, and it always baffles me. A lot of times, people who take, in particular, more fundamentalist positions on religion will accuse atheists or evolutionists or whoever else of just having their religion, and they'll say it with all the, like, you can hear there's a lot of venom in his voice. There's a lot, like, he says that kind of with disdain, and it's really weird because, like, well, you like religion. It's really weird. I don't know why they do this because he's a proponent of religion. I think maybe it's like a little bit of like Christian dominion. Um, is it dominionist? This like idea that like, well, it's an opposing religion, and I would speak as cruelly about any other religion, but it's one of those like, but you like religion, and obviously it's not, right? What he's talking about is not a religion. He understands though that it's something that would be possibly upsetting to his interlocutor. That's why they do it. This happens a lot. Fundamentalists love to do this. Well, they'll say a lot of really inflammatory things that, at the very least on the surface, don't look like active insults, even though he knows they are. So that when the other person claps back, he can be like, "Oh, what's with this? Like, you're being really offensive or whatever." Another debate I've seen Hakigachu in, I saw him do the exact same thing, where he'll speak with open hostility towards things like freedom and happiness, and then when someone calls him a monster, he'll be like, "Dude, that's really offensive. What's wrong with you?" That's interesting. Yeah, maybe religious people don't think their belief is a religion. I mean, maybe there's a distinction between the two that they derive. Maybe they think it's just the truth, right? Like a religion means a series of people believing in gods that aren't real, whereas they think they just believe what is true. That's interesting. I wonder if that's I hadn't thought of that. I wonder if that might be a factor. I'm not really sure. My best guess is it's just meant to be inflammatory. Aron in particular is a little susceptible to this. He does get pretty heated. I don't know if he gets actually angry. This might just be it might just be fun for him. I know Matt Dillahunty is kind of like that. As someone we have also on the watch later list, where he'll get really heated and he seems really angry. He's like, "No, I'm having fun. This is fun for me." So maybe he's not actually angry, but like Aron in particular, Aron and Matt Dillahunty are people who I know for sure are a little more susceptible to like taking the bait and getting really heated about that kind of thing and coming off as like really angry at him for saying something. Whereas if you believe what Kent says, it just makes you look angry and irrational and aggressive, like that, fitting the angry atheist stereotype. And it's unfortunate that it's a thing to be dodged optically, but it's the same way that if you're arguing for feminist positions, you shouldn't come off as triggered, because then they'll just start screaming triggered snowflake at you. It's the same thing. You just unfortunately the stereotype exists, and to defend your position in a effective way, you kind of have to avoid looking like the stereotype. This is part of why I like people like Genetically Modified Skeptic and Cosmic Skeptic, both of which, as my understanding, are atheist and are the exact opposite of an angry atheist. They're very calm, very I would even go so far as to say that Genetically Modified Skeptic has a very calming voice and a very calming presence. And I think that's part of what would make them effective when there's this backdrop of angry internet atheists screaming into their webcams about how religion is bad.
And those are the nice things we say about it.
Okay. Is that all you want to say?
What? Well, yeah, we're building a Christian park in a campground, actually.
And now the advertisement, right? Now the grift. I don't know if this is in the intended portion of this for that, but like I think that's the intended portion of the discussion. Is supposed to be introduce yourself and what you're talking about. And I guess I wouldn't fault Aron for talking about the Phylogeny Explorer project, but given that Kent is so thoroughly a grifter, and so identifiably one, it just feels worse than advertising something that someone might be genuinely passionate about aside from a paycheck.
Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola, Dinosaur Adventureland. It'll be a simple science experiments to teach biblical lessons, and you guys can come on down. We have a lot of fun. We have 10 lakes on the property. Someone gave us the property.
Yeah, someone
And we're having
gave
all
him the
kinds of things.
property.
We're
Like that's the
hoping
kind
to
of
be open April 21st.
that's the kind of sway that this guy has by lying about this shit for years. That's like this is what I mean about how he tricks people into this stuff and how he ends up being dangerous. Someone gave him a property to create Dinosaur Adventureland. I can't imagine that's a small area, you know?
My website is drdino.com, and the phone number, 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3, takes right straight to my cell phone. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go straight to his cell phone? Would it be funny to call him? I'm not going to, but I'd be like kind of interesting, right? I don't know.
Aron, why don't you go ahead and take a minute or two, kind of tell people who you are and your positions on all this.
My name is Aron Ra. I had it legally changed for my state senate position, and because it's the name that I wanted to appear when I both ran for office, and of course also on my book. It's on all my publications for the last 10 years.
He goes on about this because Kent, I don't know if it was before or after, I know definitely after, insisted on referring to Aron as a different name. I don't know if that was Aron's given name or previous name, or if it was just like what Kent assumed his name used to be. I don't know, but that's part of why he's going in about it. Like, no, this is legally his name. It's, please refer to me by my actual name. Thank you. It's kind of interesting, especially because when I first saw this, I was less aware of trans issues, and so it's interesting to come back to it now and see like, hey, look, dead naming, but for cis people. All right. Well.
And it's now on my driver's license, my credit cards, Wikipedia, all of that. So I am the Southwest Regional Director of American Atheists, and I'm the director of the Phylogeny Explorer Project. And we do, my wife and I, we do educational videos, and I have a channel of 160,000 some odd subscribers where we counter creationism.
Okay.
And of course, my book available on Amazon is The Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, and very highly rated.
Like you can plug your stuff portion. All right, it's not as bad that Kent was doing that, but it's still pretty bad given what he's trying to create there. I don't know what's up with his webcam. I don't know if he shows. I'm pretty sure he shows up on camera at some point. I guess in case he doesn't, let's just so you have some context of what this guy looks like. Not that he I'm not saying like even if he looked weird that we should make fun of him. Just like get an idea of your mind of what this guy's face is. Okay. This is what he looks like now. I wasn't trying to find his. This looks like a mugshot or whatever, but this is what it looks like now. So just plug that face in. This is who we're talking to. It's sometimes useful to have a face as like a disembodied voice.
And Mr. Hovind is mentioned in it numerous times.
Oh, yay. Thank you, sir.
All right, awesome. So what we kind of figured was, because it's not going to be a structured debate, and there's so much that I think you gentlemen have to discuss, I'm just going to kind of throw it over to you guys. And Kyle and I kind of going to step back, let you guys have this a very free-flowing, organic conversation. Aron, why don't you kind of start us off? Or I think that Kyle had mentioned before that maybe there's something that Kent wanted to mention, or did you kind of bypass that, Kent?
Kent wants to go on about something first.
Okay, that's fine. If Kent, you want to start on that, and I know you said it may take a while, but if Aron is kind of cool with it, then you want to lead in with that, and we can go from there.
Yeah. No, Aron had done
figuring out what to do
YouTube,
here, I guess.
4 or 5 days ago, and I already did a quick YouTube for our listeners, but technical problems. It's not posted yet.
I don't want to make fun of. I don't want to make fun of the boomer too much, but he did a quick YouTube. All right.
It's coming though, so I don't need to do that. Let Aron go first. I'd like to hear his position.
All right. Well, my position is that obviously counter yours completely. I mean, I would say that the reason that the Bible is absolutely wrong about absolutely everything is because it was obviously written by ignorant, bigoted, primitive, superstitious savages who clearly had no idea what they were talking about.
I'm of two minds of this kind of representation of biblical texts. On the one hand, I do really like that it is kind of using that same inflammatory tactic in the other direction, describing what someone who doesn't like religion might call accurately the contents of the Bible in a way that might offend a religious person and maybe incite him to anger or whatever. I don't think that's particularly effective because the idea of the angry Christian isn't really as prominent a stereotype in people's minds. On the other hand, I think since most people don't view the Bible that way, or at least not in those explicit terms, it does make you come off a little bit like the angry atheist stereotype. So I don't know. This is more of an optics thing than an actual arguments thing, and I think I'm going to be focusing on that a lot because this debate, don't expect good arguments. All right, just don't.
And that's why there's nothing that can be verified accurate, but a whole lot that is laughably stupid about what the Bible describes about the world. In fact, the way everything the Bible says about the earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos, any indication about genetics or history, anything, is embarrassingly dumb. Yeah, and there is, of course, no truth to any of your claims about evolution being a religion, for example. This is just an attempt at projection where you're trying to.
Because Aron's speaking first, I understand the interest in pointing that out. Kent hasn't spoken yet. I don't know how well known he would be to this audience. If they already know who he is, then yeah, you can do this. If they might not be, this you're kind of striking at air. Maybe you should be more laying out reasons to believe in the accuracy of the evolutionary model. Another person who has debated Kent Hovind, Gutsick Gibbon, did this. The unfortunate thing, of course, is that to Kent Hovind, this is a waste of time. And so you're just kind of stuck. I don't really know what the best thing to do is here, but this strikes me as a little bit the wrong strategy, even though I don't know what else you really could be doing. Maybe because it's a discussion, maybe you should leverage that and just lay out like say something to the effect of evolution is corroborated by more evidence than basically any other theory in science. What do you have to say about that? And just get right into the discussion. Make Kent say things that you can demonstrate the ridiculousness of.
Cast your own faults onto those who will not share them, and it's an attempt at the fallacy of false equivalence, which is what I think you meant to talk about. I'm sure, because that deals with most of your arguments. That and equivocation.
Well,
I'm glad you didn't talk for any longer.
Before we get into a discussion too far on the topic of evolution, we need to define what we're talking about. And for many years, I think you've obviously seen many times my division of that word into 6 different categories.
Yes, those are inaccurate, so we're gonna go with the correct definition. I know that you've actually bragged many times.
It's very good. So we're gonna see this a lot, and I think it's what you have to do with something like Kent. Aron will cut him off before he can say too many wrong things in a row and correct the error. This is going to come off as rude and constantly interrupting. But what you have to keep in mind with someone like Kent is that, and Aron, I think, says this, he is capable of lying more times in a single sentence than there are words in that sentence. And there's a video on Aron's channel where he shows an example of like, here's the sentence. It's like 7 words. There are like 8 or 9 lies in it. So it's important to do, even though it comes off as rude. And this is the first instance where this being a discussion is really relevant. One of the worst things you can do, like we saw a couple days ago with Hakagachu, is allow, and Aron didn't have a choice in that case, to be clear, is allow someone like this to speak uninterrupted, uncontested for like 10 minutes, where they will layer so many lies on top of each other that it would take hours to unravel it all.
That people have corrected your misdescription of that, and it's appropriate that they correct you on this. I don't know why you don't correct yourself when you keep repeating an error. So when we talk about evolution, unless otherwise specified, because there is a colloquial meaning that doesn't apply to biological evolution or the science of evolution or certainly the theory of evolution, which pertains only to the aspect or theory of biodiversity, which can be summarily defined as genetic variance in reproductive populations over time, or a change in allele frequencies in reproductive populations.
This is a good point. Like, I don't think it's super relevant because I think most of the time when people talk about the theory of evolution, they understand that it's not the same thing as when you say languages evolve or whatever. It's obviously it's making reference to the same kind of idea, but obviously it's not saying that they literally crossbreed and like have to fight predators or whatever. That said, like, obviously Kent isn't going to understand, or is going to pretend not to understand this, and has really weird ideas about what evolution is supposed to be, to the point where like the distinction between evolution in normal language and evolution scientifically is almost irrelevant for how different it is to to Kent's definition of evolution, which is absolute nonsense. I wonder, actually, maybe see if I could. I don't want to like watch a video about it, but I wonder if I can find a list of Kent Hovind's 5 kinds of evolution. Oh my god, I just remember because I wonder if it's in his Wikipedia article. Because they're really funny, and also I was just reminded by that autofill suggestion that Kent will use the term evidences, where evidence is plural, but he'll like talk about having 5 evidences for something. Anti-evolution claims. I really just want to list. Domestic violence is a portion. I did not know about him being arrested for allegedly throwing his estranged wife. Oh, okay. Oh, this is also well after this debate. I didn't know about this. Huh. Well, you learn something new every day, right, folks? Okay, he has videos on it. I don't want to watch a video on it, but yeah, he has like 5 different kinds of evolution, where like the first one is the Big Bang, and like the third one is abiogenesis. These are just not what evolution is.
Relations over time.
Okay,
Now, I
so
can give a longer definition, but still, it's going to be within the confines of biology.
Okay, so you're saying the word evolution only encompasses the living things that have already come alive somehow. So you're leaving out any kind of organic evolution, or what I would call.
There's no such thing as organic.
So this is what I mean. What he means by organic evolution is abiogenesis, the creation of life from non-life. And he says, evolution is this. It's like, no. It's not.
Evolution, if we're talking about abiogenesis, that's a overlapping series of different processes. None of them are the evolutionary process, which is descent with inherent genetic modification.
I like that he clarifies.
So is this descent with genetic modification limited in any way, or do you think elephants and pine trees are related?
Well, definitely I think that elephants and pine trees are related.
So this is something Kent does a lot. I don't remember if it gets pointed out. Probably, because Aron's pretty good about this. He'll always he'll try to say 2 very different things to make it seem super ridiculous, like pine trees and elephants. Oh my god, they're so different. And to a 5-year-old, which Kent constantly references, yeah, that does seem ridiculous. And I think to the average person who has never heard of evolution, and this is why people like Darwin were kind of a big deal, because that concept and demonstrating it explains a lot about the world, and it's something that's not intuitive at all, no. But he won't say things that are closer together that would disprove his position. So, for example, do you really believe that wolves and dogs are related? Or maybe even, because he talks about kinds, right? Like, maybe you say, do you really believe that dogs and bears are related? But those are not so different that it seems ridiculous. In fact, my understanding is that historically there have been both dog bears and bear dogs, whatever that means. Aron talks about this. It's very funny. But, he won't talk about things that are very, very closely related, because Kent, as it turns out, believes in speciation. It's really weird. You'd think that he couldn't, but he actually has to, and we'll get into
related,
that.
and that is a demonstrable fact, yes.
But there's just so much to talk about.
How would you demonstrate the fact that elephants and pine trees are related?
One of the primary way is phylogeny, which is kind of what I'm all about. It's my hobby that has become, thankfully, my job. Directing the Phylogeny Explorer project, which is an attempt to depict the entire phylogenetic tree of life as a navigable online encyclopedia of the entire cladistic system.
Okay, so just for the audience's sake, you are what I would say, skipping the first 5 definitions of what I call evolution, the cosmic.
What only you and people who do not know science call evolution.
Okay, I think every textbook from every public school teaches all these as part of the general overarching principle. Even
Except that none of them, no textbook.
So this is a little bit of a conflation that Kent does. It's not worth getting into from Aron's perspective. So it's good that he's not getting into it. But yes, textbooks will teach these different things, but they won't claim their evolution because they're different concepts. But he'll do a little bit of a Mott and Bailey, which is maybe something I should add to our concept document, because it's going to come up a lot. A Mott and Bailey is an argument where you present some very difficult to defend position, like textbooks claim that Big Bang cosmology and abiogenesis are evolution. Then when challenged on it, back up to say, look, it teaches Big Bang cosmology in a textbook, and it teaches evolution in a textbook, but that's not the same thing. It doesn't claim that those are the same concepts. It just teaches both. The different textbooks will teach those things. I'm glad Aron doesn't get into it, but I do want to focus on how to talk, what's wrong with these arguments, and appraising arguments on their quality, even if it's not relevant in a debate like this. Instead,
Anywhere ever
Aron
described what you described
rejects it outright,
as evolution. Unless
Stick
you want
to
to
the
get
point.
into
Very
Abeka
good.
or some of the other Christian deliberate misrepresentations to try to deceive students. But if you're talking about actual scientific documents, nobody agrees with the way you misrepresent this. So we're going to keep evolution as descent with inherent genetic modification.
So
it's a valiant effort to try to hold to this, and it's something you have to do. But of course, Kent is never gonna drop his 5 forms of evolution. He is gonna go right back to, you think you came from a rock. You might think that's an exaggeration. He will say exactly those words repeatedly in every video where he talks about this.
Descent with inherent genetic modification, so they already have the ability to reproduce. They already are alive. They're already able to move, replicate,
He
and
says it's like it's
ingest,
ridiculous,
digest
but
food.
yes,
You've
exactly.
already bypassed the major hurdles that are going to be a great obstacle to your religion.
Well,
I don't have a religion,
you certainly do.
We absolutely.
This is what I mean about like taking the bait a little bit. I don't know if there's a way to handle this in a good way, but like, because you don't want to let it hang. You don't want to just let it pass and say like, okay, sure, whatever. Because then someone might see this uncontested claim and you're just like, oh, so it's true. But at the same time, to respond to it, you take exactly the bait he wants. This is where the more dishonest the actor, the less likely it is that you can platform them responsibly. I think that the Non Sequitur show actually was pretty responsible here. They got Kent with possibly his biggest critic and his biggest antagonist. They followed it with a discussion that allowed more time to deconstruct what he was talking about, and I can't find it anymore, but it was very funny, at least for a little while. They subsequently did a roast of Kent Hovind that it didn't have the presumed respect for the person of honor. Also, he wasn't there, so you don't really. It was very funny, but it might feel like really rude and disingenuous to do that, but they provided the enough time and the right people to demonstrate why this guy is completely wrong, completely laughable, and so I think it's the way they platformed him ends up being fine. I'm not opposed. I don't think it's like always wrong to platform a bad faith actor with really horrendous positions, but this is very different in terms of context as opposed to something like Hakigachu a couple of days ago, in part because this is a discussion. Kent didn't get to talk for 10 minutes without anyone stopping him and correcting him. That's a big deal.
Certainly do not, and we're about to prove that. Kent,
Okay.
I want to hear your infantile definition of what a religion is.
I like putting
Let's see how you've explored that.
You can look
I
it
don't
up
think
in
it's
any
on- it's
dictionary.
not that
Look
great,
it up
but
in Wikipedia.
It's not a great
Well, I
religion,
have
but I like
actually
putting them
looked
to
it
the
up
test.
in a lot of different dictionaries. When I
let's do it. You know what? Let's go. Let's follow along. Let's sink to the bad faith. Let's see what the dictionary defines religion as a particular system of faith and worship. Kent would probably stretch this to say evolution, but that's not what that means. A pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. Consumerism is the new religion. I guess people use it in this way, but obviously they won't say like people don't authentically say consumerism is my religion kind of thing. Like nobody worship like it's not consumerism isn't a religion, but people might ascribe to it some of the same importance on a person's life as religion, as opposed to something like this, a particular system of faith and worship. In fact, I think it's Aron Ra. I'm pretty sure it's Aron who tried to come up with a definition that encompasses all religions and excludes none of them. And to my understanding, the only pushback he's gotten that is reasonable is it seemed not to encompass some pagan religions. So it's kind of funny that he's talking to Aron specifically, who has gone out of his way to try to define religion more thoroughly. I don't remember exactly what his definition is, but if I remember correctly, it's like it's belief in some supernatural something, and that the body in some, or that the soul in some way exists posthumously after death. I forget exactly. He phrases it obviously much better. And so it's funny that this conversation is coming with someone who has put a lot of thought into what we mean by religion.
I took a course on comparative, or the history of comparative world religions.
I don't know why.
Our professor there challenged us, saying that religion was something that he thought was impossible to define. I didn't think it was impossible to define because I do classification and I understand the rules for how to classify things. And as a matter of fact, I made this a little easier. I posted a collection of definitions that are relevant to this subject some years ago, back in 2012. I put something called Offerings to the Atheist Dictionary, because these are words that are comically is correct, that are comically misrepresented whenever you're arguing with creationists. The definition of religion that I came up with by examining all the different things that are universally accepted as religion by both their adherents and their critics are a doctrine of ritual traditions, ceremonies, mythology, and associated dogma of a faith-based belief system which posits a posthumous promise that some element of self, be it a soul or consciousness or memories, etc., may in some sense continue beyond the death of a physical being. Now, this
I think that's a really interesting definition. I don't have any personal disagreements with it. As I say, there was one person